Welcome back to Leaf the Week Behind, my stitch series for 2025. In this video, we are going to discuss weeks 5, 6, 7, and 8. It's going to be a long video, but for those of you that wanted a tutorial, I'm going to go through each one of the weeks. And the first one we're going to start out with is week number 5. And let me show you how I stitched this leaf. For today's video, I am stitching on my linen practice piece. This is different than my tree, but I'm going to do all of the tutorials on this linen. And we're going to work on this leaf here. I am using an Eleganza Pearl Cotton. This is EZM 61. It's a size 8. This is different than the one that I stitched on the wool, my tree. I thought I would just mix it up a little bit. This color is called Beach Towel, I believe, and you can get this on the website. I've threaded a chenille number 8 needle, and I am going to be stitching a Palestrina knot around the edge of my leaf. I'm not going to take a bite in the wool because I prefer to have my Palestrina knots in the background, and I'm going to be stitching in a clockwise manner because I'm left-handed. If you are right-handed, you may want to stitch counterclockwise. Do what feels good to you. So first I'm going to come up to the top of my work, and I'm going to take a small bite, just like this. And I'm going to pull my needle through. Now I've got my thread to the left. If I was turning my work this way, the thread is to the left. I'm going to take the back of my needle and I'm going to go under the bar. And I'm going to keep my thread to the left. And I'm going to go under this little V here to make the Palestrina knot. Now I have a tutorial on YouTube for this stitch. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to work all the way around. I'm going to take another bite. Got my thread on the right, take a bite. Take the back of my needle, go under the bar. Now, if your thread gets a little loose like that, before I pull it all the way through, I'm just going to tighten it up a little bit. Just like that. I'm going to keep my thread to the left, take the back of my needle, and it makes a little knot, just like that. I'm going to work a few of these, and then I'll speed up the video, and we'll go on to the next part. I stitched all the way around this leaf, then to realize that I should have been stitching a coral stitch instead of a Palestrina knot for this leaf. So I am going to do a little tutorial on some sample circles here, and I'm going to stitch a coral stitch just to show you how to do the stitch, and then we'll move on. I'm going to come up to the top of my work in the background, close to the circle. I'm going to take a little bite. I'm going to wrap my thread front to back or counterclockwise. So let me show you again. I'm going to wrap it around the needle front to back. I'm going to pull my needle through, and it forms a little knot. It's very similar to the Palestrina knot. Take a little bite. Wrap front to back, pull your needle through, and that's all there is to the coral stitch. Just like that. The next step for this leaf, we are going to do a bullion loop, and we're going to do those along this straight edge here of your cotton applique. And to do a bullion loop, you're going to come up to the top of your work like this. You're going to take a little bite, just like that. So you can see that. And then you're going to wrap, and because we're doing bullion loops, we're going to wrap 20 times. So we're going to do 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. Okay, so I've got 20 wraps on my needle. I'm using a milliner's size 3, and I'm still using the pearl cotton size 8. So I've got all my wraps. I've made sure I pushed all of the wraps all the way down to the base. That's really important. Now the next thing you're going to do is you're going to put your thumb over the stitches. If you are right-handed, you're going to put your left thumb and you're going to hold on to it. And I like to use the pad of my thumb, not my thumbnail like this. Use the pad, and you're going to pull it on through. Just pull it slowly until you've pulled your thread all the way through, and it's going to form a little loop. And then you're going to tighten the loop just like that. And then you're going to take your needle down to the back of your work. And it makes a little loop. So you're going to, we're going to do a pistol stitch on top of each one of these. So I'm going to go ahead and do that. So I'm going to turn my work just like this, because I want to tack down the loop, and I'm at the edge of this, so it's going to be a really small pistol stitch, and then the other ones will be a little bit bigger. So I'm going to come up to the top, and I'm going to wrap 2 times, and I'm going to go back down in the background here. I'm going to make sure that I kind of tighten that up. Okay, and I've made a little pistol stitch. So then you're going to be ready to do the next bullion loop, and we're going to come up to the top. I'm going to take a little bite, and I'm going to wrap it 20 times. Hold on to it. And I use my thumbnail to tighten up the stitches. So I've got my little loop here. I'm going to take my needle to the back of my work. And then I'm going to do another pistol stitch at the top to tack it down. Just like that. Okay. So you're going to work that row right here of bullion loops, and then we're going to do the next step. So here is my bullion loops and my little pistol stitches. I've done the whole line here. So the last thing we're going to do is do a back stitch around this edge. So I'm going to turn my work, and now I'm going to switch to a chenille needle, same thread, and I'm going to come up to the top, and I'm going to do a back stitch. So you can do this 2 ways. You can do a stab stitching method, which is up and straight back down. Sometimes you have more control over your stitches if you do the stab method, and that's basically making 2 motions, coming up through the top and going back through in that same hole of the previous. Or you can do the sewing method, which is just coming up to the top. And I'm going to zoom this in just a little bit. And instead of doing the stab method, you'll do the sewing method, which you're going to go down in the hole of the previous stitch and you're going to go back up to form the new stitch. And you'll do that just like that. Depends on how you like to stitch the back stitch. And that is how you're going to stitch week number 5. I'm going to finish this, and then we're going to talk about week number 6. This is week number 6, and I'm going to show you how I did this leaf. We're going to be stitching an open trellis stitch around these 4 little 1/4 inch circles, and then we're going to do a chain stitch around the edge. I did have somebody comment they really struggled with the size 5 pearl cotton that we're going to use and stitching around these little circles. It's probably a little easier than you think because I use the stab method to back stitch the foundation of the trellis. So let me get my sample and let me show you what we're going to do. I've got my leaf stitched down. I've got my 4 little 1/4 inch circles stitched down, and I've done 1 of the open trellis stitch. I'm going to be using this pearl cotton. It's Easy M105. It is called Laguna Beach. And I'm not using an 18 chenille needle. I dropped the needle down a little, I think it's like a 20 or a 22. I think it might be a 20, just a little bit smaller than that really large size 18. I can definitely thread the needle just fine with this. So this is what I'm going to use. And the first thing you're going to do is you're going to make a foundation of back stitches for the trellis stitch. Now just keep in mind that I have a YouTube video that is all about the trellis stitch, and it's called No Tears Trellis Stitch because we don't want you crying. It's an easy stitch if you just have a little bit of patience. So let's take a look at what we're going to do to start. So I'm going to come up in the background close to my applique, and I'm going to do a back stitch, and I'm going to do this all the way around. Small circle, smallish back stitches, but all you're going to do is stitch all the way around, and I'm going to do the stab method. So I'm coming straight up and straight back down. I'm not doing the sewing method because I think you have a little bit more control, and I don't pull my back stitches too tight. You just want to pull them close to your applique or your background, but you don't want to pull them too tight because you'll have trouble getting your needle underneath that bar when you're doing the trellis part. So you can see I'm coming up and I'm going back down, just like that. And I'm making these back stitches for the foundation of the trellis stitch. I'm going to move this around a little. Going back down. Okay. So I'm going to finish this and I will come back and we'll start the trellis stitch. Okay, I have stitched the little back stitches here and I've changed my needle to a tapestry. I'm using the Eleganza Easy 105 and it's the number 5, so it's a little bit bigger. And I'm also using my Clover tapestry needles. I really like these needles. I think that you don't really need to use this 18 size for the size 5. You can drop down a size. So I've decided on doing the number 20. So I've got the 20 here. You could probably even use the 22, but this is a little bit smaller needle than the 18, and I really like these, so I'm going to use those. So to make this stitch, I'm going to come up in between 2 of those back stitches. I'm going to zoom in for you, okay, so you can see it. I'm going to come up to the top. Then from the inside out, I'm going to take my needle underneath that back stitch and I'm going to wrap it front to back or counterclockwise. So if you're looking at your work flat, you're going to wrap your working thread around the needle front to back. If you pivot up and you're looking at your needle this direction, you're going to be wrapping, it's the same thing, you're wrapping counterclockwise. Some people use the term counterclockwise. I tend to like front to back, meaning it goes from the front to the back, and then you're going to pull your thread through, your needle through, and you're going to make a little knot. And I like to tighten the knot by just pulling straight up. It doesn't have to be super tight. And then you're going to go through the next one. You're going to wrap it front to back. And it makes a little knot. And I'm going to go all the way around. And I will continue making this trellis stitch, and then I'll come back when I'm around the other side. Okay, I've come all the way around, and this is round 1 that I just did. Now we're going to do the second round. So this was the first knot that I made. I'm going to go in between this knot and this knot. I'm going to go take my needle and go underneath, and then I'm going to wrap it around and make a little knot. So here's the knot here, and here's a knot here. Now if you notice, if you can't see it, if you take your needle and just kind of swish back and forth to kind of pull the knots apart, you'll be able to get in there and see where you're going to go next. So I'm going to do that again. And now I'm going to keep rotating around. Oops. Look for the knot on either side. And make the stitch. I keep going around. Gotta get this untangled here. Okay. Oops. Oops. Sorry, I keep hitting the camera. I'm going to go under. Okay. Okay, so one more, just like that. So now I've come all the way around, and I've done 2 rounds, kind of see, and I'm going to just take my needle to the back of my work from the inside, and it just kind of closes it. I don't pull it too tight, but it makes a nice little trellis stitch. Okay, so let's do the last part of this leaf. The last part of stitching this leaf is doing a chain stitch, so I'm going to do a chain stitch. And if you notice, I am taking the stitch in the background, not on top of the wool, unless you want to, but I am going into the background close to the applique. Now I have switched from my tapestry needle back to my chenille needle, and now I'm ready to make a stitch. And if you notice, the stitch is kind of small because I want my chain stitches to be nice and tidy. So we're going to go right in here. Okay. And that's all we're going to do for this week on this leaf. And I'm going to stitch the rest of this off camera and finish the leaf. And that's all you're going to do. And let's look at the next leaf, and that will be week number 7. Okay, this is leaf number 7, week 7, and I am going to show you on my little practice piece how to stitch this leaf. This week there is a cotton overlay, and I'm going to use the Perfect Leaves templates. They look like this. And I've already prepped it, but I did a little bit differently than the instructions. The instructions tell you to, use a hot iron and turn the edges in, but I kind of, for some reason, I just like doing the little basting method. So I traced my leaf shape onto the wrong side of the fabric, and I cut it out 1/4 inch. I did a running stitch around, and I took the thread and I drew it up, and this is kind of what it looks like. So you can use whichever method you like. I'm going to press this to make the sides nice and crisp, and then I'll take the template out, and then I'm going to sew it onto my leaf, and then we'll do the embellishing. I've got my applique piece on top here, my layering cotton, and now I'm going to do the cast on bullion around the edge. I am using Eleganza Pearl Cotton. It is Easy M72, and the color is Under the Tree. It's a size 8, it has the green spool. I'm using a Milliner's number 3 needle, and I'm going to come up to the top of my work in the background close to the applique, and I'm going to take a little bite, just like you're doing when you're making a bullion knot, but we're going to make a cast on bullion knot. So I'm going to take a little stitch, and then I'm going to do the cast on. Take that needle out. And I'm going to cast on 8 stitches. I'm going to do 1, 2, 3, 8. Okay, I have 8 stitches on here. I'm going to hold it with my thumb, and I'm going to bring my needle through, and I've pushed it with my thumbnail all the way, and then I'm going to fold it over on itself. Now it looks kind of weird here. Don't worry about that. What I do is I like to take the back of my needle and kind of shape the cast on, and then pull a little tighter, shape it again, and then you're not finished until you anchor your stitch. You got to go to the back of your work, just like that. So let me do it again. Now, when you're casting on, you can either use your forefinger, and this is how I do it. I push my right hand to kind of get that needle under, just like that. 2. Now, if you want to use your thumb, you can do it like that. If it's more comfortable to do it with your thumb, you can. So I'm left-handed, so I'm going to work clockwise, casting on with my left hand, but if you're right-handed, you would probably be casting on with your right hand going counterclockwise, but do what's comfortable. So I've got 4 here. Okay, I've cast on 8 here. Pull my needle through. Okay. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to stitch these bullion cast ons all the way around. but I'm going to go ahead and show you the other part. This is going to take me some time, but I'm just going to talk about doing this center part. I've switched to a chenille needle because all I'm going to do is some running stitches through these little green bits here. Now, depending on the cotton overlay, you might want to do something different, but I would just stitch something simple. Sometimes the simpler solution is the best. So I think I'm just going to go up here and do some running stitches. Oh, except for I have a knot. Come up to the top, and I'm going to do it in a stabbing method. And I'm just going to accent this green part of the cotton by doing just a running stitch. And then I'll probably go back and do some French knots like the original leaf that's on my tree. And that's really all there is to it, to this week's leaf. So this was number 7. I'm going to come back and show you how to stitch leaf number 8. This is week number 8, and for this week we are going to stitch a Portuguese knotted stem stitch around the edge. We're going to do these little detached chain stitches, and I did a row of back stitches first, and then we're going to just do some French knots. So let me show you how to do these stitches. The thread that I'm going to be using for this leaf is House of Embroidery. It's 46, I believe, A, and it's called Brass. Now, I tried to order some of this for everybody, and my distributor doesn't have it, and they don't carry it. And I am going to still try to get some because I really think it's a pretty thread. But if you don't have this color, just use a pearl cotton multicolor in a size 8. I've threaded my needle. I have a chenille 24. So let's start by doing the Portuguese knotted stem stitch. Now, I already have a YouTube tutorial on this stitch. So if you want a more in-depth tutorial on it, go ahead and look at that video. I do it right-handed and left-handed. I'm going to bring my needle to the top of my work in the background, close to the applique. I'm going to take a little bite, coming out really close to the emerging thread, and I'm going to pull my needle through. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to take my needle, I've come up to the top of my work in my background, and I've got my thread on the left over here, and I'm going to take a little bite like that. Then I'm going to take the back of my needle, and I'm going to go from the outside in. I'm going to wrap my thread around that stitch, and I'm going to do it twice, keeping my working thread on the left. And then I'm going to take another bite, pull it through. Now this time I'm going to go under both of these threads so you can kind of see, and I'm going to wrap twice, just like that. And I'm going to do it again. Wrapping twice. And I'm going to continue around until I've gone all the way around. This is such a pretty stitch. You notice I'm keeping my working thread to the left. I made that stitch a little big, but I think it'll be okay. Okay, so I'm going to continue all the way around and then we'll do the next part. Now we're going to make 2 rows of detached chain stitches along this line. So all you're going to do is you're going to come up really close to the line. I actually went in between the 2 stitches, and you're going to make little chain stitches, detached chain stitches, just like this. And then I'm going to go to the next spot. And you're going to make these all the way down each side. Okay, so I'm going to go and finish this and then I'll be back. So this is what it looks like when I've finished. And if I end up seeing any of the little blue marks, I will go ahead and erase them with the little water eraser. But I don't really see any, but I'll look at that later. So the last thing you're going to do with this leaf is you're going to do some random French knots or colonial knots, whatever you like to do. I think I'll just do some French knots. I'm going to do 2 wraps. See if I can do that. I'll do a couple of these and then we'll move on to the next. And I'm just putting them wherever I feel like. Sometimes it's helpful to push your needle into your wool mat to make these. Okay, so that's what you're going to do for this week's leaf. The last step that you're going to do in this leaf is stitching some random French knots or colonial knots in this little area here. You can do as many or as little. You could do them all over the place if you want, but here I've just done a few. And that's it for